This is The Healthy Healer, where true voice is your medicine. This is where we help doctors and other healers navigate through the challenging times by learning from the best minds in the healing industry. Laugh, cry, and be surprised. It's entertainment, education, and inspiration so you can continue to be the unique and amazing healer you were destined to be. Welcome to humanity. Welcome to The Healthy Healer with Dr. Fred.
Hello, everyone. It's Dr. Fred, and welcome to the next episode of The Healthy Healer. So today we have an esteemed guest, and she's actually calling in from south of the border in Mexico, in Oaxaca. And it's a wonderful opportunity for us to connect. We have been connected before, and now the opportunity is actually connect in the other direction. I get to interview and have a conversation with Karen Maloney today and actually share that conversation with you, our listeners, as we look at the magic of how she became the healer she became. What was her course here? What was her life about? And what is she doing now? And what kind of impact is being made, as well as maybe a little bit into what is the future and where is she headed? So without further ado, I'd love to introduce you to my guest today, Ms. Karen Maloney. Karen, thanks so much for being on The Healthy Healer. It's great to have you here today.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Fred. It's a pleasure to join, and I'm glad that I have this opportunity and can be here to join with you now as well.
Okay, beautiful. And let's really get started. And one of the things that the way that we do that here on The Healthy Healer frequently is with a simple question, a simple 9-letter question that really just tends to crack the ice and sometimes put people back on their heels when they really have to look at the question. It's a powerful, grammatically correct question, only including 9 letters. So here it comes. Are you ready? It's called, Karen Maloney, who are you?
Isn't that the ultimate question? Who am I? Who are we? And it's definitely something I've been exploring in my life. And I've come to a point now where I believe that I am a spirit having a human experience, that there is a part of this whole sum total universe, divine, God, source, whatever word you want to use. And there is a piece of that consciousness moving through my physical body, having this 3D simulation game and experience and interacting with all other forms of that consciousness as well. So yeah, I think I'm a spirit having a human experience.
Okay, wonderful. And how do you separate yourself out, if at all, from other spirits like myself or others who are having human experiences? What makes
I think it's the life experiences. I think it's the essence and the energy that moves through me, the light that I radiate, the tone of my voice, how I look, all these different aspects, I think, differentiate us on this plane. And some people talk about kind of competition, and especially being a coach or working in the energy space. Oh, there's so many people doing it and it's so saturated. And the thing about it is, everyone can be doing the exact same job, but nobody's going to do it like me, because that's the energy, that's the experiences I bring, as the same with everyone else. So I think there's plenty of room for all of us. So
Okay. Yes, for sure. So competition isn't really real when, in fact, if you're just doing what you're doing, a very unique contribution to the world, and you're doing the only version of it that actually can be matched with you, given who your life experiences are, given your tone of voice, given your presentation, given your intentions and your passion, and who you grew up to be and where you're headed. What is the goal? What's the unified intention? What is the created future for Karen Maloney and her world? So let's talk a little bit about your life experience. What kind of things do you recall or do you like to relate for us that includes important highlights or contributions to your life experience up until now, coming from the past of this three-dimensional experience that we're living as simulated spiritual healing?
yeah, I suppose the first one was a childhood trauma. I was abused at a very young age for a short period of time, but it was enough to obviously affect me in certain ways. And that way that it affected me was just complete shutdown, emotional shutdown, living in freeze mode and keeping everything locked in. I didn't share and speak about a lot of things, especially emotionally, just very kind of insulated within myself, which obviously affected my confidence. I didn't believe in myself. I didn't think I was good enough. I thought there was something fundamentally wrong with me. And, that was an unconscious pattern that I lived with. I would say nearly up until my early 30s when I went through a traumatic breakup that kind of was the catalyst for me opening. But at the same time, I was very quietly curious and I was always interested. Back then, the library was my haven. There was no social media or internet or anything like that. So I loved reading books about even self-help, personal development, autobiographies of people who'd been through things and changed their lives. So I had this idea that change was possible, that anything was possible, but I wasn't living it. I didn't believe it was necessarily true for me. And all these things that I'd read about, I'm like, oh yeah, they make a lot of sense, but I didn't realize that they could apply to me as well. Yeah, I think that's part of the experiences that really I lived with, and really just that deep sense of not feeling good enough, which still sometimes rises every now and again. I think our work is constant and there can be elements that come up throughout our lives, even if we've healed, even if we've moved through it. There's different layers and it's just something that I'm aware of going, oh, here's this old nugget again. But the emotional aspect I've cleared. I can look back on past experiences and traumas and painful events, and I don't have the same visceral reaction in my body. And I believe when we have, that's when we can really gain the wisdom, growth, lessons, learnings, because unfortunately, sometimes it is part of this realm as well that we learn through pain and difficulties. It is a catalyst for growth and change. So, yeah.
So that's so intimate in what you're talking about. Your experience being very uniquely personal and including a lot of trauma. And when you get those experiences of feeling less than or defective or deficient, and they're no longer resonating at the previous rudimentary level of a visceral concern, or if they are being experienced viscerally, they're not enough to take you entirely offline. Is this part of who you've now become as a healer? And how did this get incorporated to who you've now become as a healer?
Yeah, I think it all plays a part. And I'm deeply passionate, especially about helping women. And I see it so often, whether sometimes women have been through a trauma or not, because again, we're all traumatized in one sense or another. There's big T trauma and small t. And certain things when we're growing up, they may not seem traumatic, but to a young brain that hasn't got the beta analytical part, we can take everything literally. And we're literally like, oh, I'm not important, or I'm not good enough, or other things are better than me, or whatever. And I found it's a common thread, and especially with women, that we do have this thing of not feeling good enough. And again, at the end of the day, when we get into it, there's no solid basis for that. Because again, if we look at it, there's like, my higher self, my true self, which is this essence, this consciousness, this energy, which is always perfect, whole, and complete and cannot be touched. And then there's this smaller human part. And I think from having moved through the kind of human attachment side, and again, that emotional and the traumatic pains and experiences, you can see things from a different perspective as well. And again, that kind of wisdom and learning and growth can come in. So it's really been fundamental in what I do. And actually, it's why I do what I do, because I have made such massive transformations in my life. And I call myself an inside out coach because
Yeah.
99% of it has been internal. To the outside world, I may look the same, but it's inside. I feel completely different. And that's priceless. You cannot put a price on that feeling. And I think it's the truth of us and what we all came here to experience. But I can't let, nobody can taste it beforehand. We have to go through the discomfort and the awkwardness sometimes. But if you knew how it felt, everyone would want it. So anyone who is looking for something else, who does want to heal, who does want to leave all limitations or the past or whatever behind, I'm here to say it is possible. And I think like a lot of people as well, just being a light and that guide of what it is possible.
So, yeah, that's fascinating too. That's really interesting and compelling and intriguing. So tell us a little bit more about what separates an inside out coach. What is it that you do, perhaps, that other coaches may speak towards, but don't really address at the level, at the core level that you do? Sounding like really taking into consideration the whole essence of what being is, like the whole spiritual essence of what being is, the whole virtual essence of what humanity is. What does it mean to go in there and address the inside and then get the outside manifestations of having done so?
Yeah. And again, it's a word I use. Probably some other people as well work on the inner game, because it is an inner game when you realize that we are always creating and we are the only one holding our consciousness and reality in place. And that was something that became evident to me as well through a kind of traumatic breakup, that I was like, oh, hang on, I'm the common denominator in my life. And if truly, like all these things I've read in books, that I am always creating, then it's about time I start walking my talk and going within and doing these things that I've read about. So for me, fundamentally, first of all, it's this bigger picture. If someone isn't necessarily open to the idea that there is something bigger than us, and maybe this isn't just a life where we come and suffer and pay bills and buy some things and die, and that's the sum total of it. If there isn't some openness to something bigger, or maybe that perhaps there could be a divine perfection to all of it. What if someone's not willing to play in that space of imagination? I may not be the best coach sometimes, and that's absolutely fine, because it's been fundamental in my healing as well, being able to surrender and hand over, and not hand over, it's not, we still have to do the work, but having that other, their guidance. But other things that I look at as well is the likes of our inner talk. Our word is our wand. And these inner conversations and narratives that are running all the time, that seem so inconsequential at times. And sometimes they're so embedded, we don't even know what we're thinking. But our inner talk and what we say to ourselves, again, is fundamental to how we're feeling, first and foremost, because our thoughts have a biochemical reaction in our body, but also then what we are creating. And it's looking as well with the thoughts is beliefs, because our beliefs are holding everything together. And it's getting to be aware of some of them, because I know for me, I wasn't even aware of some of the things that were running me. Like that, I'm not good enough. That fundamental underlying belief. That wasn't something that I was thinking all day, every day. It was literally a program in the recording machine that is our subconscious mind that was just playing, and I was being shown evidence the whole time. So I think it's that whole inner relationship with ourselves and the inner workings of our thoughts, our beliefs, and then the emotional aspect. I believe our body is our segue to our mind. Our mind, or them thoughts go so fast sometimes. It can be really hard to catch them. So going through our body and calming the nervous system in the first place, because again, my baseline was high functioning anxiety, but I didn't even realize it because it was so normal to me. So doing somatic and inner work to clear some of that energy, first of all, and those emotionals, to then get to the mind as well. So there are some of the aspects of how I work as well. So the spiritual, the body, and the mind.
All right. Fantastic again. I totally appreciate that. When we start talking about the spiritual, the body, and the mind, and then we interface that with the thoughts and the belief system and our emotions and the things that color how we see and experience the world. These are some of the key ingredients in what gives us a life that we call ours, like the life that is each one of us. With all of that said, what is it that a conversation with you or a conversation with an inside out coach such as yourself offers somebody who might be experiencing life at a very functional level, whether that be functionally anxious or functionally depressed or functionally feeling inferior, or maybe functionally confused or aimless, yet still getting the job done, still getting the basic job done. So from the outside, it might look like things are okay or normal, but from the inside, there's just a terrific amount of a disconnected chaos.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that a conversation looks inside out? what, from the inside out, what is it that that has to offer for your client? What can they expect upon actually taking on a practice or an interface with your type of coaching?
Yeah. So I think one of the things as well, when I'm working with someone and they're talking or sharing, I'm very quick to find their limits or their beliefs or their habitual thinking that, again, they don't see sometimes. So I'm here to reflect. And I'll often, as they're talking, I'll just stop. I'll just pick up on something and I'm like, this is a limiting belief. This is a narrative or a story that's repeating. And we may do an intervention then depending what's coming up. So we could do some tapping around it, may do some silent counseling, which is a meridian-based, non-invasive. It's like acupressure, but we use, it's like acupuncture, but we use touch, acupressure in our breath. And again, that's just to release some of that, again, that energy or fear or that block or whatever is there. So we can, again, that piece of calming the nervous system. So then we can go deeper into the story and the narrative and changing that, because fundamentally we need to change our thoughts. But again, that getting to those thoughts can be not hard because they're there, but it can be challenging to see them. So that's how I work. It's very much tailored. It's very much dependent what the person is looking for. But then again, what they're looking for may not be, or it's like the presenting problem is not really the problem, because often we just look at the problem, which could be the job, the relationship, the finances, the money, whatever. But again, it all comes back to fundamentally our way of thinking and our beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
So in the conversations, I can often pick up, I can see something in a person that is holding them back, that maybe needs to be cleared and reframed. And again, there's often an emotional root there as well. So we'll do some kind of, whether it's, breathwork, tapping, silent counseling, visualization, meditation, something to move through that as well.
So you're speaking mostly to nervous system regulation and really calming the nervous system in such a way. Like, is the nervous system interested in being calm? Is that the place of the lowest relaxation? Is that the innermost orbital? Is that where the vital force wants to take us? Is that the homeostatic resting point? Or do we have to work to go there? Or is it, I guess my question is, do we have to work to find that space, or do we have to remove what the obstacles are to naturally fall back into that space?
I think that's more it, because a lot of people, I won't say everyone, but most people, especially in the Western world, we're wired to be on all the time and go, and rest is bad, and being on edge and drinking all the caffeine and eating the sugar to keep ourselves awake and alive, and we're not sleeping well and all these kind of things. So naturally it has an effect on the body and the nervous system, and that sympathetic, that gas, that go is more activated. And I believe that our natural state is flow and ease and trust, with moments of fear, of worry, of doubt, of anxiety. All emotions are valid. But I believe our baseline is that more ease and trust and flowing and happy and joyful and loving. And we'll flip out with life situations and experience all these other range of emotions. But then we'll come back to our baseline. But I believe most people, especially in the Western world, our baseline is upside down. Our baseline is fear, worry, anxiety, doubt. And we may have moments of ease, love, trust, and joy. So it's fundamentally flipping that as well and coming back into our more natural state, which for a lot of people feels really unnatural now. And again, it can feel very unsafe, especially if you've lived your whole life on go. If there are only any unresolved traumas in your body or unexpressed emotions, it's all just energy in motion and it needs to be released. So if it's all been held in, like me, of course, we're going to be not in our normal baseline, but it's going to feel really normal, like it did to me. It's only now I can look back and go, wow, I was actually highly anxious and I didn't even know it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that had become your everyday normal, like the normal of just expectations,
I
right?
I had the story of, if I wasn't hustling and I could not rest, if I wasn't doing or being productive, I was never going to succeed in life. Like things weren't going to happen. and I could not stop. I could not rest. Now, again, is that because of the story that was running me, or is that because of the unresolved energies and traumas in my body that did not want me to stop? Because when I stopped, or sometimes if people go to meditate, all these things come up. And they need to come up. We
Yeah.
need to release them. We need to finish that energetic process. Because again, if we think everything is energy and emotions are just energy in motion, and if an energy has been blocked or stopped at a time, which again is an intelligence of the body, it's not to say that's wrong. Sometimes it's a matter of life or death, and the body suppresses and shuts down. So it's not too much for the person at the time, and that's totally normal. But then it does always start coming up. And I think, again, in the Western world, we're not, or I certainly wasn't taught about emotions and how to process them and be with them and not be afraid of them. So when things often come up again, we go into that kind of running even faster, or distracting, or avoiding, or numbing out, or binge eating, or drinking too much, or gambling, or whatever it is to distract ourselves from ourselves and what we need to feel.
Mhm. How does one become aware that they're imbalanced, and how do they find you? What makes them approach somebody who can how do they know that if you're living a life where you don't even know that you're uncomfortable,
Mhm.
what happens to people generally where they get, wow, I probably should get some help here. I probably need some coaching to find this place of peace of mind that the people are talking about. What happens?
Yeah. So lots of different things can happen. I think people do know. You do know if you're not feeling great all day, every day. You do know if you're low energy, if you're unmotivated, if you're disinterested, if you just want to check out all the time. You do know. But again, like me, I know sometimes before, when I was going to want to reach out, like years ago, I'm talking teenager, dumb down my issue then as well. I'd be like, but I don't really have a problem. So we talk ourselves out of it. So I think one, we know when we're feeling low, or we know when we're constantly in negative repeating patterns that just don't make us feel good, or we hate our job, or we're not happy with our finances, or we're in a relationship that's going nowhere. So there's these signs. But then sometimes as well, something major can happen, like an illness, disease, an accident. And these are bigger wake up calls that then sometimes people are like, okay, maybe I need to check in with someone and actually get some help. So
Mhm.
there can be lots of different signs. Or sometimes people, they're just looking for better time management. They think they just need better time management, or they need to be more efficient, or
Mm.
they want to progress in some way in their career and they're not quite getting that promotion, or whatever it is. There can be a multitude of reasons. Again, the presenting issue is never really the issue. There's that kind of root within ourselves.
Understood. And you talked a little bit about how you've sometimes in the past have found yourself in the freeze mode, in the shutdown mode. And oftentimes, as I understand, when people actually revert to that, it is the safest mode that they can imagine. That's the whole point. It's that it's a protective mechanism, a way to just curve under and contract and not put our tentacles out there for fear that we're going to be hurt. How does someone who's in that state ever even want to not be in that state? What happens to trip that person into thinking that they're imbalanced and it's time to relive their life or re-enter this unsafe world? What happens?
Mm. Yeah, I think that feeling, though, it does provide safety. It is an intelligence of the body, but at the same time, it doesn't bring joy. And the thing about shutdown as well is you're shut down to everything. And I would say I was emotionally numb. And not that I was aware of it initially, but then sometimes when I'd see people, especially when I started, I was backpacking the world, and I could see people crying at a sunset or crying over an animal or something like this. And I'd be like, wow, why can't I connect to those emotions? And I think that's a lot of what happens with shutdown. It reminds me of Brené Brown's TED Talk, The Power of Vulnerability, when she says you can't selectively choose emotions and just choose to feel the good ones and not feel the bad ones. They're either all on or they're all off. And I think in that freeze mode, they're all off. And eventually it does become, again, it doesn't feel good. It just feels empty. You can't feel. And now I can say emotions are just a gift of life, where they're part of life. And it's a gift to feel them all in the full spectrum of them all. That doesn't mean we have to be on the roller coaster with them, but they all exist for a reason. And it's so beautiful to be able to feel even heartbreak and loss. It's a gift. Whereas in that freeze state, it was all just numb. Couldn't feel anything. And I think fundamentally that doesn't bring anyone joy or happiness.
Understood. So we're really looking for joy or happiness in this world, and we're all pursuing that as a baseline. That
And
we're all,
again, I think it is our truth. I think it is our baseline. We are love and joy. But again, it feels very unnatural to us until we learn to come back to that state.
So tell me a little bit about silent counseling.
Yeah. So silent counseling, for anyone who knows tapping or EFT, so where you're tapping on your body, it's similar to that, as in it works on the same meridians, because obviously we have the same meridians in our body. And the meridians are from the traditional Chinese medicine. And the way they describe them sometimes is how veins carry our blood around the body, or meridians carry energy. And again, that chi, that prana, that life force. And when there's a block in our life force. And every meridian is connected to different emotions and different organs. So again, if there's a long-term block in that energy flow, again, lots of different illnesses, diseases, depression, and all sorts can present. So silent counseling, it uses muscle testing to connect to a person's subconscious mind, first of all, to see where in the blocks in their body are the blocks. And then we use acupressure and a breath pattern to release some of those blocks. And really what it's doing is working with the body's intelligence. The body is so wise. It knows how to heal, it knows how to clear, it knows how to be in balance, but it needs our input, it needs our help. So it's allowing the body to come back to homeostasis, to get this chi and prana flowing again in the body. And it was developed by two energy psychologists in Scotland who worked a lot with people with addictions and a lot of trauma as well. And one day they had this young girl, she was about 18, come into her office. And because when we haven't done some of that energy work, actually to talk about things sometimes can be more traumatizing. So they could see she couldn't even speak. She was like saying stuttering words, and she was getting more and more traumatized. So they were like, okay, this is not the way. She's clearly not ready to talk yet. So they just started thinking on the spot, doing muscle testing, tapping and breathing and all these kind of things. And they developed it over years and years, and it came into silent counseling. And one of the reasons silent is in the name, because that we're working with the subconscious mind. Sometimes a person, if they're not ready, they don't need to talk about it, or actually to talk about something is more traumatizing. So again, it's working with the energetics, the body, the somatic, the nervous system, again, the emotional regulation to clear some of that first. So then like that, you can go on to do deeper and the more mindset work as well. It's really interesting. And you can test different timelines and everything. And sometimes issues that come up, even if it's a physical ache or pain that people have for years in any part of the body, usually there's an emotional root there as well. I'm touching my shoulder because I'm remembering especially one woman who had this chronic pain for decades nearly. And when we were testing, it went back to it was this present life, but it was between ages 0 and 5. She actually fell off a horse that she'd totally forgotten about, that she had never connected 40 years later, but there was still some root there. So it's really fascinating with what can come up and what can come out. And it's leaving the mind aside for the moment and being open and just working with that more subconscious intelligence within us.
Fantastic. Thank you. So we start looking at many of the things that you're doing, and I'm going to list up a few of them, and then I'm going to ask you how people can get a hold of you so you can apply the expertise, multiple levels of expertise. So we have the silent counseling, we have strategic intervention life coach, We have the Reiki level 1 and level 2, as well as, is it Saichem? Am I saying that right?
Stay keen.
Psycheem, sorry about that. Energy
All right.
practitioner. And energy integrated energy therapy, IET. We also are looking at your book club you host on a monthly basis, and the idea that you are a producer of the Curiosity and Consciousness podcast, of course. And then you've been around the world, you walked on fire. I don't know where you did that. That was with Tony Robbins or not. Yeah, okay. Diving in the ocean and jumping out of a plane. Maybe that was with Tony as well.
No.
And you also, of course, are bilingual with Spanish. And you really are a multiply talented healer and practitioner. How can people get a hold of you, Karen? What should they do to want to learn from you or work with?
Yeah. Thank you for that. And I don't know, it might be a slightly older bio. I've actually trained recently or in the last year in somatic breathwork as well, which is super powerful, guiding longer journeys. And again, it's surrendering, handing that process over to the body. And it's amazing what can come up. So yeah, really my website, karenmaloney.com. Kind of everything is based there. And like that, I have a new breathwork community as well that's called Awaken Flame, but it's linked to my website, and it's again connecting people in community. We do a sharing circle, and again these longer breathwork journeys and shorter breathwork journeys as well, because I'm learning a lot about the breath, and it really is connecting us to our spirit. And again, another powerful healer that we have for ourselves when it's learning to use that. But yeah, Karen Maloney, and my name really on Instagram, on Facebook, and everything.
Cool. Great. And what's one last nugget that you have? Maybe a piece of gold, something that you can take, that our listeners can take away. If you had to say one thing that you wanted every human to know that maybe some humans don't know, what might that be?
Oh, that really life is a gift. And when we're willing to move beyond the darker, lower pains or traumas, it actually is a gift. And we're here to experience it all. And we're creators, and we literally can create and manifest anything. But we have to be consciously aware that, yeah, it's a gift. Anything is possible. And love yourself, be kind to yourself, because you've got your whole life.
Absolutely. Thank you, Karen. Brilliant. Really great to have you. Thanks for being on my show. It's been a wonderful contribution. Listeners, I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for being here with us, Karen, and we'll catch you all on the flip side. Bye for now. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fred.